The Harri Krishna movement claims to have thousands of devoted followers around Vancouver. But as Rick Ouston reports in this News Center exclusive, the cult is dealing with a dark past.
It is 7 a.m. These people have already been up for hours. This could be an ashram in India, but we're in a temple in the Vancouver suburb of Burnaby. These are the followers of the teachings of Swami Prabhupada, an Indian holy man who came to North America in the 1960s. He died in 1977. His followers revere his statue still, a tangible reminder of a man who attracted tens of thousands of followers around the world. The way to God and peace of mind, the Krishnas teach, is not terribly controversial. Live simply, don't try to accumulate worldly wealth, live with compassion and with joy. Since the movement reached Vancouver in the late 1960s, it's grown from a handful of adherents moving from house to house to an established community. The faithful raised enough money to buy 80 acres of land in Burnaby. On the day we visited, the Krishnas were preparing for their annual festival, in which they carry statues and pictures of Krishna on a chariot into downtown Vancouver. This was how the festival looked in 1984. The man beating the drum is Bahudaka, president of the Krishna temple.
We find throughout the year we meet people who came to this festival and said that they really found out something about us that they didn't know, and they learned something about the Indian culture that they appreciated.
Bahudaka attracted hundreds of followers to ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness.
I'm very convinced that ISKCON is a destructive organization. It's destructive to people, it's destructive to children, and I helped establish something that was ultimately, I feel, a negative influence on people and on society.
This is Bahudaka today. He's gone back to his original name, Peter Chatterton. And for the first time since he left ISKCON 2 years ago, he's speaking out publicly against the movement that he helped to build, the movement that was once his way of life.
I got up every morning of my life for 16 years at 3:30 in the morning and went out and ran around the streets in a bed sheet with a shaved head. You got to be convinced to do something like that, boy.
Chatterton was convinced, along with his entire family. His wife and children all became followers of Krishna consciousness. Chatterton rose to the position of International Temple Chairman before dropping out.
Dad! Your dad's Daddy. It looks funny.
Peter Chatterton's divorced now, raising his girls in a Vancouver suburb. He's left the movement, and so has his ex-wife, who lives in Ottawa with the rest of their 7 children.
One of the main reasons I joined was that I didn't like the world very much, and I wanted to do something better for my kids.
World is covered by the womb. Man is covered by degrees of lust.
Krishna parents are encouraged to send their children to boarding schools, a way of breaking the worldly attachment to their kids. Chatterton's children went to Krishna schools around the world, similar to this one at the Burnaby complex. Court transcripts and police investigations have found a pattern of sexual abuse against Krishna kids in Seattle, in Los Angeles, West Virginia, Dallas, India, and Vancouver. Among the victims were Chatterton's children.
When I got out of the movement and I found out when my kids started to speak, what had happened to them. I mean, I thought I sent them to heaven. I sent them to hell. They were in hell, those kids. You know, it was a horrible life for them.
Natasha Chatterton was assaulted several times.
I'd just like to tear up every one of these pictures.
How come?
I don't like those memories. I had a teacher, and he was a molester, and he was really nice because he pretended to be nice and stuff, but all he wanted to do was molest.
Did he ever touch you?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, he was sitting reading me a book, and I was on his lap, and he started touching my genital.
What could you do about that?
Well, I said, I have to go to the bathroom.
So he stopped?
Yeah.
That must have been hard.
Yeah.
Did you tell your parents that happened?
Yeah, I told them, well, around a month or two ago.
But not during the time that you were at the temple. Why not then?
Because I was scared they'd get mad at me and stuff. Because I was scared it was all my fault.
That would be really hard to handle.
Yeah. All my sisters, except for 2 of them, got molested.
So did Chatterton's sons. Kunja Bahari was repeatedly forced to perform oral sex on a Krishna monk in Vancouver and was also assaulted at the Krishna school in India. He has an English name now. He's 13, plays football, doesn't want his friends to know that he was a devotee or that he was a victim. There was no one I could tell, he says. No one wanted to hear it. They didn't care. I just kind of felt helpless, I guess. There was nothing I could do. I just started feeling worthless. Finally, he says, I just stopped feeling.
If I wanted to jump around in a bedsheet, I suppose that was my business, you know. But when children are getting hurt, then everyone has to, you know, you have to speak up, if you know. And the way I look at it is, well, I didn't protect my kids then, you know. And I feel pretty bad about it, you know.
During the past few years, society has learned to deal with pedophiles in our schools, to spot them and convict them. But Peter Chatterton says that instead of ensuring that offenders who were caught were punished, Krishna officials would simply shuffle those teachers off to other schools.
They wanted to keep up the front, and they didn't want anyone to find out what was actually going on, because their whole prestige and their personal sense of, you know, worth was established by how many kids were in the schools.
There were also physical assaults. Braja Levine was born into the Harri Krishna movement. She left a couple of years ago, and now, at age 19, she's going to school to learn about the non-Krishna world. She's got a lot to learn about this world.
But in math, last year I was in grade 2.
Grade 2?
It's true.
I didn't know it was that bad.
The scrapbooks and magazines at her mother's house hold pictures of the Braja the Krishnas wanted the world to see, a happy, smiling child offering cookies to Prabhupada. At school, at the temple, things were harsher.
They would put us in the closet overnight for things like bedwetting and stuff like that, and it was really scary for a little kid. We were really terrified in the closet. It was there was bugs and stuff in there cockroaches, actually, until we were really scared.
I didn't know the extent of it. I never knew
None
the
of the
extent of it,
parents knew.
unfortunately. She didn't tell me, for one thing. And
We're going to get beaten if we told.
Once, as a punishment for failing to speak up, a teacher dragged the young Braja into the boys' washroom. Humiliation of the worst kind in a society that separates boys and girls.
The teacher, he took my clothes off, and he took a piece of wood that was cut off 2x4, and he beat me. And that was a punishment for something I didn't do. Teachers in Dallas especially really felt that it was okay to hit the kids. Prabhupada didn't agree with that. He always told the teachers that they should be really loving, but it never happened.
A couple of years ago, she severed all ties to the temple, left with the bittersweet feeling that the Krishna followers had meant well, but had failed along the way.
I'm sorry, because I feel like those people who joined did have a dream. They did have a desire to make the world a better place.
Devotees in Vancouver are waiting for the publication of a book being published in New York, which has documented a pattern of abuse, sexual and physical, against Harri Krishna kids throughout the U.S. and India. There have been some arrests and convictions, including one in Vancouver last year, but many of the offenders have been allowed to flee to the Harri Krishna schools in India, where, according to Peter Chatterton's son, young boys were routinely assaulted. The book is called Monkey on a Stick, subtitled Murder, Madness, and the Harri Krishnas. It's being criticized in the movement as being crudely sensational, but the book does detail how a Harri Krishna follower murdered at least 2 devotees who had angered a guru. The man wearing the black pants is Thomas Drescher, known as Tirtha among the Krishnas. Last year in a West Virginia courthouse, Thomas Drescher was sentenced to life in prison. But Vancouver's current temple president says abusers and Thomas Drescher are just aberrations.
So because we open our doors wide to the public, and we have thousands of people come in, If somebody comes in and claims to be a devotee and does something illicit, that is certainly no grounds to judge a movement. What about the thousands of people who have practiced Krishna consciousness and been benefited? You know, who have given up bad habits?
As for the reports of harsh discipline against kids,
well, again, why just Harri Krishna people? I mean, that isn't an ethic, that isn't a practice in our movement, and it never has been to my knowledge. But as I say, our movement is not homogeneous, it's composed of individuals. Individuals may have their own problems or eccentricities in any organization. So the point is, it's just important not to judge a whole society or whole movement or religion such as ours based on the actions of a few individuals.
But Peter Chatterton says the movement must be judged, found wanting, and repaired.
A lot of people will criticize me for speaking out. And they say, well, what right have you got to say anything? You know, you were bad as anyone else, and that's true. I was, and therefore, I feel I helped create a monster, and I have a moral obligation to try and help behead the monster.
The Krishna devotees will continue what they view as their service to God. Their president says there have been no further cases of sexual abuse in the Vancouver temple during the past year that he's been in charge, and he's working with social agencies and with the police to ensure it doesn't happen again. Most of the devotees are sincere and gentle, searchers of truth who've had some problems along the way. As for Peter Chatterton, he's left the Krishnas for good, trading a temple full of followers for a home and what's left of his family.
But now I want to be a real leader. I want to be a good daddy.
Rick Ouston, CBC News, Vancouver.
The CBC building in Vancouver was picketed today by members of the Harri Krishna sect. The Krishnas were trying to stop the broadcast of the report you just saw. They don't think it's fair.
Child abuse is a social horror that happens in many schools. The Krishna consciousness movement has many, many schools and has had for many years around the world. Why does CBC want to drag out the unfortunate incidents that have happened and are not native to Harri Krishna schools? This is a clear case of religious slander and persecution.